All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to Destination the Show, episode 4. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching and checking us out. If you're brand new, welcome to the show. Here, as always, joined by my guy, Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, what's up? How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good tonight. I'm excited for this episode. Got some
Yes.
exciting things happening, so I'm not going to even tell you more about my day. I'm just going to kick it back to you.
Let's dig straight in. So today, you guys, we have our first ever guest in what is going to be a draft-heavy episode of the show, which we'll get to in short order. We'll finish up with listener questions as per usual. Quick, very brief housekeeping notes. Friendly reminder, we're on Twitter at DTS_pod1. Drop us a follow if you haven't already. Some ways that you can support the show: download it, give us positive reviews on iTunes and Spotify, help us spread the word and grow the show. If you enjoy what you heard, you can also subscribe to the Twins Daily YouTube channel. Any and all of those things will help the show, and we will sincerely appreciate it. But enough of that. Delighted to welcome our first ever guest to Destination the Show. His work is invaluable to us all year round, but in particular in the build up to the MLB draft. So we're delighted to welcome Baseball America's draft expert, Carlos Collazo. Carlos, welcome to the show. What's up? How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me. I didn't realize I was the first guest. That's an honor.
You,
So
you, you're the
thanks for letting me
first. Yeah, the first and most important.
do that.
Carlos, before we dig in, got to ask you to give us an idea of what your life has been like since the draft. I think a lot of people who maybe aren't in the weeds as you are on amateur baseball kind of think that, maybe you get some time off, but there's a good number of high school events in and around the draft. So, what have you been up to since July?
Yeah, you would think that since we kind of build up to the draft, right when it's over, you get some downtime. But it's actually funny. Ever since the draft has been tied to the All-Star game, on day 3 of the draft itself, I basically wrap the draft and then immediately fly. This year it was Arizona. So I flew from Seattle to Arizona for one of the bigger high school showcases of the summer. And that's like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. all day at the field, getting looks at the next year's draft class. And then I would say typically it's about a month more of showcases, tournaments, various summer leagues on the college side. And then getting into August, I'd say late August is typically when things finally start to slow down and I can actually breathe for a little bit, kind of regroup. But yeah, with being able to cover the draft year round, the summer is obviously incredibly busy.
Mm-hmm.
The spring, we obviously have college, but it is a bit of a unique schedule, particularly with the later draft date. But everyone in baseball, I think, has to deal with that. It's no different for us at Baseball America. So it's definitely not too bad to get to fly around and watch some pretty good high school prospects and college prospects.
For sure, for sure. So what you're saying is the fun never stops.
Pretty much.
We're definitely going to ask you about that 2024 crop of players a little bit later, but wanted to start off with some of your thoughts and reflections on the 2023 draft class. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, obviously a lot of these guys have now gotten off to, a lot of them very promising starts in their pro careers. So as you know, Carlos, we focus on 3 teams on the show: the Twins, the Cubs, and the Brewers. We're going to kick off with some questions for you to get your general thoughts on each team's class, the prospects they were able to add, and their general approach to the draft. So we'll go in order of picks here. What were your overall kind of headlines and takeaways for the Twins from this year's class?
Yeah, so this is a perfect question because for each of these teams, we did sort of a draft overview and a draft review very quickly after. And I tried to put a theme on each draft class. For a number of teams, there are some similar traits or similar player profiles that
Mm-hmm.
kind of align. One of the teams we'll talk about today maybe wasn't the case. But for the Twins, I thought they really went big on high upside high schoolers. Obviously, starting out with number 5 overall, they got kind of the 5th Big 5 prospect in this class in Walker Jenkins. They didn't really seem to try and balance that out with maybe a safer college player, although I think you can make the case that everyone in the top 5 is a fairly safe pick, regardless of the demographic. But they took Charlie Soto, who is a high upside, maybe high risk, high reward type of demographic from the high school righty standpoint. And then skipping over Luke Keeschel, who's interesting in his own right. But in the 3rd round, a really fascinating pick with Brandon Winokur, who they signed for $1.5 million. That price tag was fairly eye-opening. He has massive raw power, big arm strength, but I think a fairly risky profile overall, just in terms of the quality of the hit tool. I think that's going to be the biggest question for him. He's long levers and a little bit of swing and miss, but they took a lot of tools. They took Dylan Kestad, he doesn't really fit the super toolsy profile that I'm kind of linking with some of these other players, but his control and command were one of the best traits from the high school class. So if you count control and command as a tool, you could maybe consider him toolsy as well. So I think what stood out at the top end is just how willing they were to go to the high school demographic. I think most teams this day and age seem to steer away from that demographic more than towards it. There are a lot of teams that just went straight college and have gone pretty college heavy in the past few years as well. The Twins clearly were not worried about going for that high school demographic, which I appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. And we've tried to bury the narrative of the Twins are in love with high floor college bats over the first few episodes of our show. And their 23 draft class certainly showed that. How about let's move on to the Cubs? They certainly had a little bit less to work with in terms of a bonus pool and in terms of picks overall. What did you make of their approach to their 2023 class?
Yeah, this was the team that I mentioned that didn't really have an obvious draft theme. There are maybe 2 or 3 teams that I really struggled to put kind of one theme on it. I think the only thing that jumped out to me was they really seemed to avoid high school pitchers. That's the only demographic they didn't select. Every other demographic is pretty much covered here. High school hitters, college pitchers. They tackle them all, a number of different positions. So I don't think you can put one kind of overlining theme or headline on them. It seemed like they just took a lot of players they viewed as the best players available. It wound up being a lot of college players early on. I do like some of the high school players they took, a few Puerto Rican prospects in the 6th and 7th round who are really interesting. And just pairing those 2 players with some maybe, although I don't even know if you would say the Cubs college players are really safe type demographics at all. I mean, both their pitchers they took in the top 5 rounds have some question marks. Michael Carrico, catcher out of Davidson, has some question marks. I think Matt Shaw is maybe the only player you could throw a safe demographic on. So I think they went a number of different areas for this draft class. Obviously, I think Shaw has been pretty phenomenal. He's been one of the better performing prospects we've seen so far. And I think in general, fans don't really love high school pitchers, maybe just because of the long timeline associated with those picks. So I imagine Cubs fans are pretty happy. For sure,
100%. And last but not least, and we went in the weeds on this draft last week, and full transparency, we gushed of the Brewers draft. We absolutely loved it. What are your takeaways? What are your headlines for Milwaukee?
Yeah, Milwaukee was a little easier to put a theme on. It was big hitters and pitchers with spin. All of the hitters they took, really among the top 10 rounds, are big physical players. I don't think anyone was shorter than 6'3". You've got Brock Wilken, Mike Bove, Eric Batanti, who are all pretty massive, just physically. Wilken and Batanti obviously have pretty huge raw power to go with that. Bove is a little bit more hitterish. And then even Cooper Pratt, who is the up the middle prospect of this group of hitters, he's pretty large. He's got a really projectable frame. I think he's probably going to still add some strength and size to that. And then I think the Brewers have done a pretty phenomenal job developing arms. So I'm always intrigued with some of the traits that you see them selecting. All of the pitchers they took really had excellent field to spin. I think in all of our scouting reports for each of these pitchers, led by Josh Knoth, who had some of the best field to spin in the high school class. All of these players have really good breaking balls or just really good natural ability to spin the baseball. I think there is a sentiment that you can't really teach field to spin. I'm not sure how much that conventional wisdom has been bucked, just given how teams are able to develop pitches and refine pitches a little bit more. But it does seem to be the case that that players either are born with an ability to spin the baseball really well or they aren't. So they clearly are valuing that aspect. So I think just the fact that all of their hitters and all their pitchers had a few traits in common was interesting for Milwaukee, who quietly has one of the best farm systems in baseball right now.
For sure.
Carlos, I have a question for you, and it's maybe your radar is a little bit different because your radar is much greater, right? The casual fan, we really don't get to know a lot of the players until after we get a chance to follow them in the system. And with the draft being how it works now, a lot of these guys don't even really get in and playing until the following year. So I guess the question is, for each group, is there a guy that maybe fits that under the radar type, and who would be your favorite under the radar types from each of these three classes?
Yeah, I kind of did struggle with this question too, because I wondered about what you guys considered as under the radar. And for this, I sort of played it safe and just picked out some day 3 names, because I think for the most part, all of those guys you could consider under the radar. For most teams, there are only a few players who signed for more than 350, 400,000 on day 3. But I've got a trio of pitchers on day 3 that I think are fascinating from each of these clubs. I'll start with the Twins. We can just keep the same order that you guys went with initially. I'm going to go with 12th rounder Palshawn Pasqualado here, a right-handed pitcher. He had a really solid season during the 2023 spring. The breaking ball is a work in progress. He's toyed with an upper 70s breaking ball as well as a lower 70s breaking ball. There's some injury history and some reliever risk that makes him a bit tricky. But what was really impressive early on in the season especially was the strike throwing. It's a clean arm action and clean delivery. It's a low 90s fastball up to 96, 97. The changeup is really good. It has a ton of separation from that fastball. So I think if you get him healthy, maybe he has a chance to buck that reliever risk tag that he has. You could end up with a pretty solid strike thrower who's got a chance to get healthy, get further away from a Tommy John surgery that he had in 2022, and be a pretty solid pick. That's one I liked on day 3 for the Twins. For the Cubs, I don't know if this counts as an under the radar pick, in the sense that I have like strong confidence in it, but I was super intrigued when they made this pick. And that's 16th rounder Daniel Brown, a left-handed pitcher out of Campbell. I mean, you could make a case that he has some of the best pure arm talent in the class. It's a left-handed arm, super athletic. He's been up to 100 miles per hour. But he has no clue where the ball is going, like almost no clue at all. I'm trying to pull up the
his stat line is almost unbelievable.
Yes,
like he retired 3 people ever in college or something crazy like that, and they were strikeouts, and then the rest were hit batters and wild pitches.
Yes, it's like as high risk, high reward as you could probably get. I got to see him at the combine, and basically he just hadn't pitched a lot. Campbell thought he had really loud arm talent. Obviously, you don't see many left-handed pitchers throwing that hard at all. But his feel for pitching is absolute bottom of the scale. I got to see him at the combine, which was just a bullpen environment, no batters in the box, and they had a setup where there's a net behind the plate, and you're kind of there filming. And I remember specifically when I saw him take them out, I was like, all right, I'm staying behind this net. Someone with, I don't know if it's MLB Network or MLB Pipeline, they came up, they tried to kind of give the edge of the net to get better video so you weren't shooting through the screen. I was like, hey, you probably want to stay behind the screen on this one. It's going to be all over the place. And sure enough, next pitch, this guy's like getting up to move. The ball comes right beside the net and nails this guy in the gut. So even in this bullpen, and yeah, like 90 miles per hour, to the hip. So he wasn't feeling great. But the fact that he signed, the fact that he has little to no track record of pitching and performing, it's a super deep projection project. And I'm fascinated to see if it works out, because it's just a ton of arm talent. Again, the way we're talking about this one, like if he turns into any sort of big leaguer at all, it's a massive W. But this one's going to be really, really fun to watch, I think, just because there's no player like this in the draft, I don't think, this year. So that one's just a fun pick, I think. And I'm really rooting for Daniel because he seems like he's a nice kid, and I hope he can figure it out. But that was a tough outing for him at the combine. For the Brewers, it's a little more of a your typical pitching prospect. It's not this outlier like Brown is. But I went with 16th rounder Josh Timmerman. He was a junior college pitcher for a few seasons. Good frame, 6'4", 195 pounds. Struggled at times as a split starter and reliever with the Buckeyes. The performance there isn't great, but he was really good in the Cape. He's also exceptionally young for the class for a college player. He's got a fastball in the low 90s up to 95. Solid spin and carry on that pitch. It's a breaking ball with high spin rates, and he'll occasionally mix in a cutter and a changeup. So there's a lot of intriguing traits with him between the 4-pitch mix, the carry on the fastball, the field of spin, the youth. Just a lot of things to like with him. And I think they signed him for, I don't think it was much more than the $150,000 you're allotted on day 3. So getting a player like that, I thought was pretty fun for the Brewers, for a team that has done a really good job with developing arms. That's a lot of positive indicators for me.
For sure. Those all definitely qualifies under the radar in our book. I think that'll work nicely. Carlos, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on now, as opposed to right after the draft, is one, knowing how hectic your schedule would be, but also just to see how the beginning of some of these guys' pro careers would play out. Quickly you get some kind of context to build on as they get started with their organizations. So who has impressed you so far with their pro performances? Again, for the Twins, Cubs, and Brewers, maybe we can keep that same order since they turned pro.
Yeah, absolutely. That works. This one's maybe not as fun because a lot of these guys that I looked at who had really impressed from these orgs were pretty early picks, maybe not super shocking that they've done well. Typically it's more fun if you can get a guy maybe later on day 2 who's really impressing and you're maybe changing your evaluation of the player. But I think for the Twins, maybe you want to see Walker Jenkins go out and perform and succeed. Sure. It really feels like all of those top 5 players have gone out and hit really well, and maybe not pitched consistently in the case of Paul Skeens, but Walker Jenkins has been really solid. It's only rookie ball. It's not a ton of games, but he's already hit as many home runs in 14 games of pro ball as he did during his high school senior season. I think there were a few scouts who were maybe kind of raising their eyebrows and wondering why he only hit a pair of home runs. He was supposed to be the best hit power combination of the high school class, which I think he still is. I actually went and saw Walker Jenkins for one game and got to see one of those home runs he hit. So I was lucky with the look that I got. But I think it's probably more a case of him getting pitched around than anything. He's a savvy hitter. He's not going to expand the zone too frequently. He'll take his walks, and he certainly got a lot of those this spring. But just to see him go out and perform is really solid. I don't think there's another player that really jumped off the page to me too much for the Twins. For the Cubs, I think Matt Shaw has been one of the most impressive players from this 2023 class overall period. You can stack up all 30 teams and all the players they've had. I think right now he has the second best OPS of any 2023 hitter who has more than 100 plate appearances, which that list of players is going to be fairly small. But the fact that he's already pushed to AA is really encouraging. It seems like a lot of teams are being more aggressive in their assignments for players, which I like. And Shaw just kind of continuing to be this offensive force that he showed he could be throughout his career with Maryland. It's translated directly to pro ball. He's hitting for power. He's hitting for average. It looks like a great pick so far. The fact that it really hasn't tapered off at all in AA is encouraging. I'll wonder when the first professional roadblock comes up for him. But that one looks fantastic. And then for the Brewers, Brock Wilken, outside of him just performing, what I'm impressed with is the fact that he's hitting over 300 at a couple levels. I think he's only gone to 2 different levels at this point. You guys can correct me if that's not right. But the fact that he's hitting over 300, he had the first 2 seasons at Wake Forest, he never hit over 300. So coming into this spring, the hit tool was a bit of a question. He's definitely a power over hit prospect and player, but the question was how good is the hit tool actually? He showed a lot of improvement this spring with his pitch recognition and just ability to kind of take the walks that he was given. I think it was close to a 20% walk rate. Both his walk rate and strikeout rate so far in pro ball have looked solid. And I think for a player like him, where you have some hit questions and you kind of wonder, okay, what is this hit tool going to look like in pro ball? The fact that he's hitting for a high average, the fact that he's taking his walks, the strikeouts aren't too concerning at all right now. I think that's all really positive indicators because Brock, more so than Walker and Matt Shaw, is a very hit forward profile. If he's not hitting, he's not going to have a lot of value. He's not this up the middle player who's going to offer a lot of defensive value. The fact that he's performing really well is encouraging. And like I said, specifically seeing those walk rates and strikeout rates as solid as they are is really encouraging for me.
For sure.
At this point, Carlos, I was going to ask you about traits that teams look for, but I think you kind of answered that earlier. So I'm more looking forward to talking about the 2024 draft. So I'm going to kick it back to Jamie to start that talk.
Sounds good. Okay, so Carlos, you brought up high school showcase circuit events for the 2024 class. Now, obviously, for you, this is kind of a rolling process, looking at guys from different classes kind of throughout the year. But you guys already have 2024 lists up of Baseball America. Folks should subscribe to that immediately. If you haven't, you're missing out big time. How do you, as a draft writer and a draft evaluator, kind of go about the process of, one, familiarizing yourself with a new class when the calendar kind of officially flips and a draft cycle is done? And how do you go about kind of sifting through to create an initial list? Because it strikes me as a pretty monumental task. So how do you kind of dig into that process?
Yeah, it's changed a little bit over the years. I'd say the first 2 or 3 years I was at Baseball America, I was responsible for all of our draft coverage and all of our amateur rankings in general. And so that process, the first few years was the draft would happen. I would go to the summer showcase circuit, watch those events, watch USA Baseball's college national team, which typically has all of the best college players from any given draft class. And then after that summer period, I would make as many calls as I could throughout the industry, try and find a consensus between those classes, trying to get comfortable with top 50 on the college side, top 50 on the high school side, and then making sort of a combined top 100 from those lists that would come out at some point, either late summer or early in the fall. And I even think when I started, our initial list didn't drop until maybe late fall or early winter. That's changed a little bit. We've gotten more aggressive on the underclass rankings side of things. Ben Badler, who does our international work and prospects work, he really likes evaluating, watching these younger players. So he actually has given us a pretty good head start on the high school side of things. He's watching this, like for instance, this summer, he's watching 2025s and 2026s. So that kind of history for us starts a lot earlier. And I enter the summer with a list that Ben has been working on for a year or a year and a half. So he's already watched these guys as underclassmen. So I am more familiar with these players just from reading his work, watching his videos, talking with him about those players. But I think for me, in terms of familiarizing myself with the players, it's largely the same. It's the summer evaluation period. Just kind of trying to go in, not necessarily blind, because you know who some of the top players are, but just trying to go in with no expectations, see who jumps out to you. And then same thing, kind of taking what I see, asking scouts what they see. And again, I'm not going to see every player. Some players don't go to every single event that I'm going to. So still a bulk of it is through the reporting. But we've really lengthened out the history that we have with these players on the high school side and then the college side as well. We tried to basically match up the high school underclass rankings with our college rankings. And that one, again, you have some history with most of those players because you've covered them through high school. You cover them a little bit more throughout the spring for the college season. But that's basically how it works. If there are any other ways I can kind of highlight that, let me know. But that's kind of the process.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I think now as we look forward to the 2024 class, knowing that it's months and months and months away, how do you view that class as far as strengths of that class, weaknesses of that class, or maybe not weaknesses, but areas to grow? How does that look 10 months before the draft starts?
Yeah, I would say enjoy the 2023 class and soak it all up when you can, because the 2023 class, first of all, is probably the best draft class that I've ever covered. I think it's pretty easily the best draft class I've ever covered. That goes back to 2017 for me personally. This class it's going to be a combination of 2023 hangover, but I also think the 2024 class is just not that good right now. That could obviously change. You mentioned it. We have a lot of time between now and when we actually draft. So there could be players who have a good offseason, look good in the fall, add some weight, come out strong. Players get healthy in the spring, kind of fix some of the holes in their profile, address some of the weaknesses in their game. But I really don't think there's maybe pitching depth is an area of strength that you have, but on both the high school and the college classes, there is no clear-cut, obvious top player in either class. There is kind of a group of players who are in the mix. But last year at this time, we knew Dylan Cruz was Dylan Cruz. He was the top player in the class. It was fairly easy to assess him as that. We had Chase Dollander, who was a consensus top college pitcher in the class. That obviously changed between that time and draft time, but you entered the year knowing, okay, we have one of the best college pitching prospects we've ever had, but we've had in several years with Chase Dollander. He was at that kind of status. On the high school side, you had Walker Jenkins and Max Clark as the clear-cut top high school players, up the middle types, tools, track record of performance. You don't have that really on either side in the 2024 class. There's Nick Kurtz, Travis Bazana, JJ Weatherholt on the college side. All of those are first base, second base profiles. You don't have any center field profiles, shortstop profiles you can feel confident about in the class. If you do, like Vance Honeycutt at UNC is a no doubt center field profile. He has massive hit tool questions. A lot of the pitchers in the class, they have huge reliever questions. They don't have track record as starters. They've got control questions. For the high school class, maybe you have really toolsy players like a Connor Griffin. Again, you don't have the same conviction in the hit tool that you did with a Max Clark or you did with the Walker Jenkins. Derek Curiel, one of the other top high school players in the class. I think I have a lot of personal conviction in his hitting ability. He also doesn't have the sort of impact and tools that you might like to see from a player at the top of the class. So I think it looks down right now. That could change. It'll be fun to cover from my perspective because there should be a lot of moving parts really in every update we do. And it's wide open at the very top. So if you're bored because Dylan Cruz was one and he finished one for us and you want more of the horse race, that can be fun. If you're a fan of a team who's projected to pick top 5, you probably don't like that as much. So we'll see.
For sure. And you, Carlos, you kind of anticipated my question. So my next question. So I'm going to focus it even a little bit more. Right. Because you said it like last year, we knew dudes who are going to be at the top of this class. It was pretty evident for a while. So if you're a betting man and you had to wager on one high school player and one college player who were going to kind of emerge from this group of kind of talented but not fully formed top of the 2024 draft class, who's a name, one college, one prep, that you would give folks to pay attention to as we enter the 2024 season? And I'm
so
putting
this
you on
is
the
a name
spot.
that I think is going to move up boards, or I think will be in play at the very top.
Kind of both. You can take it either way. Whatever jumps out to you.
Okay, so I'll say for the college side, I'll go with JJ Weatherholt, who's a second baseman at West Virginia. He led the country in hitting for much of the 2023 season. He had a good amount of home runs. He had a ton of stolen bases. He was the best hitter on USA Baseball's college national team. That fact alone is always a pretty good predictor of who's going to go early next year. I think he just has a really good combination of plate discipline, bat to ball skills, power. He's not the most physical player. I think he's only listed at 5'10", 190 pounds, but he's quite strong. He's got a lot of power in the wrists and the forearms. The ball really jumps off his bat. It kind of surprised me how quickly the ball jumped off his bat with Wood over the summer. So I think he's a fairly complete offensive player, even if there are some questions about the defensive ability. How much value is he going to give you as a second baseman? And then for the high school side, I will go with Cade Arambide, who is a right-handed hitting Texas catcher who entered the year with a really impressive reputation as a defender. He's got really impressive actions behind the plate, an absolute cannon of an arm. It's probably a 70-grade arm. He showed really impressive opposite field power this summer for me, both in batting practice and in game. was probably one of the better performers I saw with the bat. And the fact that you have a solid hitter who has power, who looks like he's going to stick a catcher and be a very good one, that's a rare profile. I think it's pretty similar to Blake Mitchell from the 2023 class, and he just went top 10 overall in an underslot deal. The big difference between the two is Blake Mitchell's a left-handed hitting catcher. I think the industry really values that. Kate Arambidi is a right-handed hitter, but I do think he's better defensively. So he's a player that I like. Going with the high school catcher might be risky because teams just hate the high school catching demographic. It does not have a good track record at all. But I think there's a chance for him to maybe pop up a little bit more on draft boards in this year's class than he would otherwise, just because there's so much room wide open, and he does have tools, and it is a premium position, and he now has some of the better summer hitting track record of the class, which also bears a lot of weight on draft day.
Love it. Love both. Carlos, to finish up, we're gonna throw in a few listener questions your way, if that's okay. These are gonna be putting you on the spot a little bit more. Jeremy, you want to take the first one here?
Yep. So Keat N34 on Twitter asks about Brandon Winokur, who you liked for the Twins. Questions why he wasn't promoted from the FCL Twins with Walker Jenkins. What do you make of him as a prospect? What are you going to be monitoring most closely moving forward? And then I ask, and what do you make of him getting some time at shortstop?
They played him at shortstop.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shortstop, center field. Yeah. I've tried him at two spots.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize that he played that many games at shortstop. I'm just pulling it up now. I don't know that I ever saw him play shortstop, actually. I might have to go back and check, but I would be very surprised if he stuck at shortstop. I think it's probably good for him to get the reps. I think it's not surprising to me that he wasn't promoted with Walker Jenkins. If that was a question from the reader, sorry, I'm trying to juggle a couple of things you guys asked. I think that Walker was supremely advanced as a high school hitter. That's why he went where he went in the draft. That's why he got the money that he got. I had mentioned a little bit earlier, I think Brandon Whitaker's biggest question is the hitting ability. We have him graded out pretty well in supplemental tools. I think he's got a chance for above average in-game power. He has significantly above average raw power. He's a good runner, especially for his size. He has a chance to be an above average defender, probably in a corner outfield position, I would think. Again, he played shortstop at times for his high school, but I never really expected him to play shortstop in pro ball. Maybe that was just a little bit too critical of me. He's got a massive arm. He's been up into like low 90s, mid 90s on the mound. So the tools are pretty spectacular. The question for me is going to be, how much does he swing and miss? Is he able to consistently catch up to pro velocity? And if he proves that, which I think he's got a good chance to do because there's some bat speed there, how is he going to handle professional caliber breaking stuff off speed? For those long-limbed guys who have some swing and miss, I think the secondaries are always a bit of a question. So what's the approach going to be like? What's the hitting ability going to look like? How much of that raw power is he going to be able to tap into consistently? Is he going to have to sacrifice a lot of average or OBP to get to that? We'll see. So I think all of his questions lie on the hit tool. If he's able to hit at even a below average level, he can provide a lot of value for you just given the raw power that he has. So now I'm more intrigued about the defense, though. Like, if they're playing this much at shortstop, like, you don't see too many players that big playing that position.
Right. But I mean, do you think that part of that is just an experiment to see if there's any chance he can stick in the dirt? I mean, Miguel Sano played shortstop in rookie league. And so if there's a chance he could play third, if he checks all the other boxes, that's not a terrible thing to have, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, we were talking about this on a podcast recently at BA, like there are some teams who are giving their players reps at shortstop, even while knowing that they don't view them as having any chance to stick there. Whether that's because you want them to simply get more reps, which you'll get at shortstop, or whether it's because they've got a better chance to improve their footwork, improve their lateral agility. Like if you're playing shortstop and you want a guy to really focus on maintaining his body and staying athletic and lean and quick, I think there are a lot of benefits you can take from that. So I think even if you think there's a very slim chance he plays a position, it's not going to hurt him by any means by starting at a tougher position up the middle like a higher end defensive spectrum position. Yeah, I don't think there's any issues with that at all. I'm mostly just more surprised by it. I guess I should have known that coming in this, but no, I think maybe a chance for third. I still think outfield is probably more likely just given the actions I saw, but I've been proven wrong before in this, and it won't be the first or the last time.
So this is where Jamie tells you that Luke Keishel's been playing some center field too.
This is true.
Yeah,
this is true.
Luke Keishel actually has been hitting the ball harder in pro ball with a wood bat than he was with a metal bat in college, which that jumped out to me as well, because I think power is maybe one of his biggest questions, and the fact that his exit velocities are up with wood is really encouraging.
I heard you mention that. I think it was on the AL Central review that you guys did. Definitely surprised, but it fits. I mean, he's seen now I think three levels already since he turned pro. So encouraging start for him for sure. Carlos, next question. This is an interesting hypothetical. I think this is a Milwaukee Brewers oriented question from Jake McKibben, Twitter handle @TheBrewerBlogs. He notes that the Brewers and Twins picked back-to-back in Comp A. The Brewers took Josh Knoth at 33, with the Twins taking Charlie Soto at 34. I think it's impossible not to put the finances for the finances to be in the mix, because Soto got, I think, about $400,000 more, and we know that the Brewers performed some financial wizardry to get Batanti and Cooper Pratt when and where they did in the draft. But if you just stack up the pitchers, what do you think the Brewers liked about Knoth over Soto? Because Knoth was more of a kind of helium Northeast kind of late riser up draft boards, I think it's fair to say, as opposed to Soto, who was kind of where he was from the beginning of the process. And which of those two arms do you like moving forwards, if you had to pick one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question quite a bit. I think if you talk to Ben Badler, who is my coworker, he loves Josh Knoth. He's been a huge fan of him from day one, significantly higher than, I think, actually Ben from the start of the season liked Josh Knoth about where he went at the end. And to your point, Knoth was a big riser throughout the spring, really impressed, started moving up draft boards. I think this is a great example of like illustrating what teams value and what maybe other teams don't as much. Clearly the Brewers value field to spin significantly, and I think the Brewers also value fastball shape. Those are two areas where Josh Knoth really excels, and I think Charlie Soto, one of the critiques coming up with him as we approach the draft, people were saying, hey, don't be surprised if he falls a little bit. The fastball shape is a little bit questionable. He throws really hard. I think he has some of the best pure stuff in the high school class. Just when you go down every pitch type on our preseason best tools balloting, he was top 3 for fastball, for slider, for changeup. He's one of the better athletes on the mound as well. But if you're a team who really prioritizes different pitch shapes and ability to spin the baseball, I could see a team like the Brewers knocking Soto a bit for that fastball shape. It's kind of dead zone life at times. And if they don't think they're going to be able to fix that or figure that out, maybe you'd rather just go with a guy like Knoth, who you feel very confident can spin the baseball, chance for double plus pitch. And to your point as well, the Brewers moved a lot of money around in this draft. They slid some money to later on. So the $500,000 or so, when you're getting that player who you like those spin attributes, it maybe makes it a little bit easier for you. Both these players are also really young for the class too. So they're at least even in that category overall. But I think those are some of the things that maybe you could point out if you're a Brewers fan and you're like, hey, I saw Charlie Soto ranked really high on all these boards. Why would they not take him with Knoth on the board? I think those could easily be the reasons why.
Makes good sense here. Carlos, we're going to finish with 2 quick ones, if that's okay. I'm going to give you some kind of unfair hypotheticals here. And I did not send these to you in advance, full transparency. So has not escaped anyone's notice, I'm sure, that Jackson Holliday just made his AAA debut. I think he got his first AAA hit tonight.
Oh, nice.
And kind of impossible, you mentioned that this 2023 class being the strongest in your time covering the draft. Obviously, Jackson Holliday went number 1 in 2022. Maybe this is an unfair question to ask given how incredibly Jackson Holliday's performed this season. But if you were doing a re-rank, where would Jackson Holliday fit into the 2023 kind of historic top 5 that we just saw of Cruz, Skeens, Jenkins, Langford, and Clark?
So we're saying Jackson Holliday's thrown into that group?
Yep.
And I get the benefit of hindsight, or do I basically take what I thought of him pre-draft 2022?
You get however you want.
You get however you want.
If I get hindsight, he's the first pick. If I do with no hindsight, so trying to account for where we had him in 2022 before he went crazy in pro ball, I think I would take all the college players, and I might take Walker Jenkins. But the fact that Jackson plays shortstop makes me think I might take him basically 4th after Cruz, Langford, Skeens, Jackson. And that would probably be my order. Although it's very hard to completely separate out hindsight, but I think that's probably what I would have done. Jenkins versus Jackson Holliday with no pro track record for Jackson Holliday would be really fascinating. I think I would pretty safely take Jackson over Max Clark. Pre-draft. But again, if we get the hindsight, he's the first pick.
Okay. I'm impressed. I would have done a lot of sitting on the fence if someone asked me that question. So, great job. Okay. Jeremy, you want to get the last one?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you another totally unfair question. But I also want to ask if I'm completely off base. Last week, I suggested to Jamie that we're just a couple of years away from having potentially the greatest top prospects that we've ever seen. Is that fair or completely unfair?
Honestly, the fact that it's fair tells you how good both these players are. I really don't think it's unfair at all. He's currently Ethan Holliday, Jackson Holliday's younger brother, another son of Matt Holliday. He currently ranks as our top 2025 high school prospect. He's in that number 1 spot. So I don't think that's unfair at all. If Ethan Holliday was in this 2024 draft class, I would have a lot more confidence in telling you who the top of the class high school player was. If he reclassed right now, he would probably move straight into the number 1 high school player in the 2024 class. I mean, I just saw him for the first time in person, and he was probably the most impressive player on the field, and he was one of 2 2025s playing in an All-America game of 2024. So Ethan Holliday right now is better than Jackson Holliday at the same time at their age.
Wow.
So Jackson Holliday entering his draft year during the summer, he was viewed as a top 2 round player. He was not a consensus first round prospect at that time during the summer, and really skyrocketed up boards. So they're going to be very different players. They'll get compared a lot. It's a natural comparison to make. Ethan is built much more like his father and looks more like his father and is more physical now and is a more offensive oriented player who might wind up being a corner, but has a really impressive hitting ability and a ton of power now. So they're going to be different, but I don't think it would be surprising at all if we look back 5 years from now and we see them going off the board in similar ranges and they're both lighting up pro ball. Like it's kind of scary.
So, and that was going to be my question, where he would rank in 2024, the younger brother. Is there anything he could do to reclassify into this 2024 class, or is he just too young?
He could reclassify right now. We've had people reclassify who, there's no rule preventing him from reclassifying. It would basically be, I'm bringing up colleges, but it's very unlikely that Ethan Holliday is going to ever make it to campus. There's nothing stopping him from doing it. He could do it tomorrow. He could do it. I mean, we had some players do it January, February of their draft year, so he could certainly do it. Because I haven't heard anything about him.
Right, but he's obviously in that. I would assume in that family they're doing okay. That it wouldn't be a let's get paid quicker, but he could get that money in 10 months as opposed to in 22 months. If he could go first in 2024, you'd assume he'd go first in 2025. That to me, like the fact that he's already being talked about maybe speaks a little bit to the 2024 class, but also speaks to how big of a stud he is.
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. I think it's probably like his last name, even if he wasn't as good as he is, he would be talked about. The fact that Jackson has been as good as he's been would make him get talked about. But the fact that he also is backing it up on talent, I'm not sure what the Holliday family thinks about reclassifying. They might just want him to have a normal high school career, finish playing with his friends. And like you said, they're in a position where they don't need to worry about it. They can kind of run it out. But there's a chance that the 2025 class is just better than the 2024 class. Again, I'm fairly down on 2024 in general. It doesn't seem like a super strong draft class. So I think there's a lot of sense if you just want to get into pro ball and you want to set yourself up well and you're confident in your abilities, like there could be a lot of sense in him transferring or reclassifying to 2024, because I honestly think there's just less competition from the high school demographic. Again, I haven't had any conversations with that. I haven't heard anyone speculating about that, but it's interesting to think through and talk about, because he would fit right in if he reclassified. It wouldn't be an issue at all. I mean, we just had Cam Collier do that a few years ago. He was one of the best hitters in the class. In his respective class, he was like 17 the entire time. So it's not unheard of, and I think Ethan is a talent that could make that work pretty seamlessly.
And then there's another little one. There's a third brother.
Yes. He's quite a ways away, but there is a third brother there.
I'd put him on the top of whatever list, whatever year it is.
Go ahead and plug him in. It'll probably be pretty safe.
Well, Carlos, you've given Jeremy something to dream on for the next 10 months.
Baseball.
But before the 2024 draft. Want to finish by thank you so much for coming on with us today. You guys, if you don't already, you can follow Carlos on Twitter at Carlos A. Collazo. You can see it right there in the video. Make sure you are subscribed to Baseball America. That is really essential work and content for anyone interested in baseball, and especially the minor leagues and amateur baseball. Carlos, anything coming up at the site or podcast wise that we can help you promote or that you are excited about?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you promoting BA in general. I think that's the best thing to promote for us. Like, all of our work goes there. Subscribers really allow us to do what we do year round. So thank you guys for that. If you are a subscriber or you've considered subscribing, really appreciate that. Then otherwise, I would just say the Future Projection podcast that me and Ben do. It's about a weekly podcast. We just talk about amateur baseball, all things prospects, some major league talk in there. So that'd be one other thing to plug. But otherwise, no, that's all good. Just check out BA.
You heard the man. Check out BA. Carlos, thanks so much for being our first ever guest. We truly appreciate it. We'll have to have you back on when this 2024 draft class has shaped up a little bit more. Thanks so much for the time, man. We appreciate you.
Thanks,
yeah,
Carlos.
thank you guys so much. Have a good night. Take care.
That was the awesome Carlos Collazo, Baseball America's draft expert. We hope you guys enjoyed the show. Our first ever guest on Destination the Show. Finally, if you guys want to support the show, please download the episode, retweet anything you see on social media, subscribe to the Twins Daily YouTube channel. As always, want to thank producer Theo behind the scenes for making everything run smoothly. Jeremy, that was fun, man. What should we talk about next week?
I think we got some good stuff queued up, but I don't think we want to give it away just in case my camera goes blurry or you lose your power. But Carlos was excellent. That was really fun. I could have just sat there and listened.
I know.
Sometimes I was hoping that Theo was going to take me off the screen, because I'm just like, you know, looking like a dork, nodding my head, smiling.
Yep. That was great. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. As always, we will see you guys next week. Until then, take care.